What's up everyone, and welcome to another Minecraft farm tutorial. In this video, we're going to be looking at this gigantic bamboo farm. I designed this in Bedrock, but it should work in Java Edition as well. The only thing I'm not 100% sure on is the pistons in the flying machine. So if you're playing on Java, be sure to build the flying machine first just to test it to make sure that it works. This farm uses a flying machine scythe harvester thing to cut down the bamboo automatically, and then a minecart collection system to collect all of the bamboo, so all you have to do is push a button when the bamboo is fully grown. The version we're looking at right now is my first draft of this farm, trying to figure out all the different mechanics. I fixed a few bugs, changed a few things, and polished it up a bit for the one that I'm tutorialing out for you today. I tried to keep it as simple as I possibly could while maintaining efficient rates. That way it'll be easy for you to build and easy for you to follow along in this tutorial. And this farm produces an absolute ton of bamboo. And this isn't even the full size. You can make it bigger or smaller, it's totally up to how much bamboo you're looking to get. But for now, let's jump into it, starting with the materials list. So here is all the stuff you will need to build this farm. The very top row is in exact numbers. You will need at least 2 obsidian, 2 sticky pistons, 2 regular pistons, 4 chests, 3 observers, and 18 slime blocks. The middle row is just rough estimates. You will need like a half a stack to a full stack of redstone dust, at least a full stack of glazed terracotta, maybe more depending on how big you make the farm, at least 1 button, but having more will help you test the machine as you build it, and a handful of repeaters, maybe like 7 or 8 depending on how big you make the machine. And the bottom row is for your collection system, so this really depends on just how big you make the farm. If you make the farm like 20 blocks wide, these quantities are for every 2 blocks, so you'll need 10 minecarts, 20 hoppers, a ton of rails, and then a bunch of levers or redstone torches. And then all the blocks in my hotbar are just your building materials. I recommend using some sort of light source block. Also, just building blocks of your choice, either like glass or solid blocks, totally up to you. Then of course you'll need some dirt and bamboo to actually plant your bamboo on something. And now let's talk about the build area. It's going to be 19 blocks wide and 20 blocks tall, but it'll be as deep as you want it to be. You could expand this out to simulation distance, so you could make it about 64 blocks long, and it would still work. The main build area, where your bamboo and collection system are going to be, is 17 blocks wide, but you will have this little section out to the side here, where we're going to have a little bit of redstone to actually power your minecarts. And your flying machine harvester will poke out the front just a little bit, represented by these white and red blocks here in the front. But start off by making a platform that is 17 blocks wide, and this is where we're going to build our collection system. Again, it can be as long as you want to, up to simulation distance, so up to around 64 blocks long. On the left side of your platform, place a line of solid blocks. This is where your minecarts are going to be pressed up against, and then dig out the row next to that so that you can place in a double chest on the front side, and then place hoppers in the canal that you dug going into that chest. Your minecarts, when they're not moving, will be resting on these hoppers. Now also, one little trick to make sure all the hoppers are pointed into each other and into the chest is just to throw an item into the last hopper and make sure that it goes all the way down. Depending on how long you make this, it might take a little bit for it to reach the chest, but this just guarantees that all the hoppers are pointed into the right direction. Also, for your collection system, this farm produces a ton of bamboo, so I would recommend at least placing 1 more double chest for your output of your collection system. And don't forget to place a hopper going into the newly placed chest underneath the pre-existing row of hoppers. And you could always expand the storage even further in any way that you see fit. But next up is the rail track. We're going to place a powered rail on top of the hopper, followed by a regular rail, and then 3 more powered rails going into regular rails all the way down. And then we're going to place 2 more powered rails right next to the end, and then regular rails at the very end so that we can curve it back to the second row. Then we're going to repeat this pattern going all the way back down, except for the end where we're going to place only powered rails. Now, depending on what orientation you built this at, your ending rails might want to connect together. If this happens, simply break out the back block of the first row, place an additional temporary rail before you place the other end rail. And you could probably get away with using less powered rails if gold is an issue. But let's just place a minecart with a hopper on top of the hopper, and then temporarily power all the other powered rails just to test it. It's always good to test it, especially if you use less powered rails. Again, you could probably get away with using less powered rails if gold is an issue. Just be sure to test it and make sure the minecart goes all the way and then returns back to where it's supposed to be. But once you test it, break out your power sources, and now let's just repeat this process. So we're going to repeat the exact same pattern of rails, continuing forward. Now again, remember, if your rails are connecting to each other on the end, you'll have to break out the previous block to place a temporary rail before you place the ending of the next row. The problem with the rails connecting to each other will only happen to about 50% of you because it depends on what orientation you're building the rails at, from like north to south or east to west. I forget which one rails actually prefer, but they prefer a specific direction. Luckily, it's not much of an issue, just as long as you remember to place your temporary rails to redirect the rails so that they don't, change their orientation. But that's basically it. Just repeat this pattern over and over until you fill up your entire platform with your collection system. Now, if you are having trouble with the ends connecting to each other, and you do make a mistake at some point, you will sadly have to redo the entire first row. You'll just have to break out all of the first row of rails and blocks to go back to the very beginning to place your temporary rail so that your rails stop connecting to each other. It is unfortunate, but it's fairly easy to fix, and once you really get in the groove of things, you can start doing it fairly quickly. I usually mess this up at least once when I'm doing a rail system in this orientation, and so, you just have to get used to doing the pattern of remembering to place a temporary rail so that it doesn't redirect the previous rail. And if you're ever building a rail system such as this and you want to just flat out avoid this problem, all you have to do is place a rail down on the ground just to see which direction it faces. Whichever direction it goes is the direction that the rails naturally want to go. And so just build the rail system in that direction, and you won't have problems with the rails trying to connect to other rails when they're not supposed to be. But for this farm, just continue placing rails in the same pattern until you have filled up your entire platform. And I will say that this is the most time-consuming part. The rest of the farm is fairly quick and easy to build. Just placing the rails tends to be long and tedious. Anytime I have to build a rail system like this, I kind of dread it, just because it takes so long to build these rail systems. But once you're finally done, throw yourself a celebration, and then place your minecarts with hoppers on top of the powered rails next to the regular rails, so you should have one every other row like so. And now we need to power all the rails except for the ones that the minecarts are sitting on. So the way we're going to do this is by digging a hole underneath your row of powered rails. This is why it's nice just to repeat the pattern over and over so that all of your powered rails are lined up with each other. So just dig a hole next to one of the rows of powered rails, and then directly underneath one of the rows of powered rails, we're going to dig out the top block. So you have this little ledge underneath the powered rails. And then on this ledge underneath the powered rails, we're going to place redstone torches so that they power the rails above them. Now, if for some reason this isn't possible, or if you don't have a bunch of extra redstone, you can always use levers instead. You can place levers on the bottom of the block that the powered rails are sitting on, and then turn the levers on, and it will power the rails that way. So for this side, I will go ahead and use levers just to give you an example of how they work. So just like last time, start off by digging a hole underneath your powered rails, but also be sure not to power the rails that your minecarts are sitting on. You don't want your minecarts to be moving forever and ever and ever. You only want to power, all the other powered rails, except for the ones your minecarts are sitting on. So once you've dug a hole underneath the powered rails that you're trying to power, I like to dig a trench just so that you're not placing the lever like squished on your head. It gets a little annoying when your head is where you're trying to place the block, so I like to place the levers off to the side like this, but just place your levers on the bottom of the blocks and be sure to turn them on, and that will power the powered rails like so. So whether you use redstone torches or levers, it is totally up to you. It just really depends on how much extra redstone you have. But now let's test all of the minecarts to make sure that they go all the way across with no problems. We'll just throw a lever with some redstone dust and then delete some of it and replace the lever to make sure that, all of the minecarts go all the way and come back. It's always good to test stuff as you go, just to make sure there are no problems. Like if you already placed the platform that the bamboo is going to be growing on, and then realize the minecarts don't actually make it, you would have a very difficult time adding powered rails. But now let's build the flying machine harvester. So come over to this corner right here above the rails, and we're going to place 3 temporary blocks right here. These 3 blocks are to measure where your flying machine is so that it's at the right Y level. but we're going to place slime next to the topmost of these blocks, and then we can go ahead and delete these blocks. So that slime is 3 blocks above the rails. And then we're going to place 7 more slime blocks going off to the side, and then our 9th slime block is going to be right here on the very end. Then we're going to place an observer next to that slime block facing the rest of the machine, and then a sticky piston facing you next to that observer with a glazed terracotta right here in this crevice between the slime blocks. And then a regular piston facing that glazed terracotta with a block of obsidian behind that piston. Next up, we're going to place a temporary block in front of this sticky piston so that we can place another glazed terracotta right there. Then we're going to place a slime block to the left of this terracotta, and then 3 more slime blocks behind the terracotta. And then we're going to place 5 more slime blocks going off to the left, and it should line up exactly with your minecarts. So each of these 2 sections has exactly 9 slime blocks. But then we're going to place 2 temporary blocks at the very end of this slime coming out the back, then break out this one so that you can place an observer facing away with the back of that observer in that last slime block right there. And then we're going to place a sticky piston on the other side of that slime block facing the other part of the machine. And this part is done. If you activated it, it would just keep flying forever. So the next thing we need to do is take our obsidian over to this side and just pillar up somewhere where it's going to come into contact with the slime. So from this angle, it'll be the left slime that it's going to run into. So just try to place an obsidian block where that slime is going to connect with it. And you might place a few additional obsidian blocks because sometimes it's hard to tell if you're on the same Y level. But when you're ready, place a button on this obsidian and then press it. And doing this will cause the flying machine to start flying. Now it might be a good idea to run over to the other side just in case your obsidian is in the wrong place like mine is. You know, if it misses the obsidian, it will just keep going. So it needs to run into this obsidian anywhere on this bar of slime. And it should stop flush with the rails below it. But now we need to place some temporary blocks underneath this piston right here so that we can build the returning mechanism. So after you place some temporary blocks, we're going to place a regular piston facing this sticky piston right here. And then we're going to place an observer facing this other observer. And then after we place this observer facing the other observer, we need to put down 2 more blocks right here so that we can place a repeater coming out of the observer and a repeater going into the piston. And both of these need to be set to maximum delay. And then place 2 redstone dust connecting these repeaters together, and now the return sequence is complete. So now we just need to place a temporary button right here and press it so that it will go ahead and send the machine back on its way. Now you don't need this button. Later on, it will activate on its own whenever it sees that the flying machine has made it all the way. And the flying machine harvester is now complete. Now we need to attach the flying machine harvester to the minecarts. So start off by placing blocks underneath this slime block between the piston and the observer, and we're going to place a redstone dust directly underneath that slime block. And then we're going to place blocks going off to this direction until we get 2 past our platform. Once we're 2 blocks past our platform, we're going to build another line of blocks going all the way down your platform like so. Next up, go back to the block that has the redstone dust on it, and we're going to place a redstone repeater coming out of that dust on a maximum delay. Make sure it's on maximum delay, and then we're going to place redstone dust going all the way over here, but we're going to place a repeater aligned with the first minecart, also on maximum delay. And then we're going to place redstone dust coming out of this repeater all along these blocks that you placed earlier. Now, of course, you will need some repeaters to ensure that the signal is strong enough to make it all the way across. So you could either count out 15 blocks and place a repeater there, or just throw down some repeaters to make sure that the signal is strong enough. And technically, this back row of blocks doesn't actually need to be all the way to the end. What you can do is count out up to 14 blocks away from the final minecart, and then break out the corresponding back row. Basically, as long as the final minecart is close enough to the back row to be able to receive a signal from a repeater, it will be okay. When I was recording this, I had it in my head for some reason that repeaters send power 15 blocks total, not 15 blocks in each direction. And so I'm counting out 8 blocks and then placing a repeater, but you could technically count up to 14 blocks and then place a repeater, and it will still power all of the minecarts. So whether you count out, 10 blocks, 8 blocks, or up to 14 blocks and then place a repeater, it's totally up to you, and it's totally fine either way. I just kind of had a brain short during this time and was thinking that repeaters were less powerful than they actually are. And so no matter how long you make this, just place repeaters coming out of the back row so that it powers every single minecart. I'm so sorry if I made this confusing. At the time, I was just trying to be efficient, but I had the wrong concept in my head. Either way, no matter what, even if you're confused, if you simply activate the flying machine now, it will test all of this. So whenever the flying machine returns back to its original position, it should activate the redstone that you just placed. And then you can just have a look-see and make sure that all the minecarts activated. And of course, if one of the minecarts did not activate, simply just add another repeater and it will be okay. So, if your flying machine goes back and forth and activates the minecarts, all of that is now done. The only thing that's left is to build the platform that holds the bamboo, and then build the walls so that the bamboo doesn't get flung out. So we're just going to make a dirt platform all above the rails. So everywhere that there is a rail, we're going to place a dirt block above it. Now, technically, some of this doesn't need to be dirt because you won't actually be placing bamboo on it, but dirt is cheap and you'll surround it by different blocks anyway, so I would recommend just using dirt for this entire platform. Or technically, if you want it to be more fancy than dirt, this can be any block that bamboo can grow on. And once you get your dirt platform fully filled in, now it's time to build some walls. So we're going to start off by getting our glazed terracotta and place a line of glazed terracotta at the very end of this platform underneath part of this flying machine. So slime can't stick to glazed terracotta, which is why we need to use it. But then go over by 1 block above this redstone dust, and then up by 2, and then back over, so that we're left with this little hole that the flying machine can fly through. Again, you can use any color of glazed terracotta, that does not matter at all. As long as it's glazed terracotta, it will work. Then we're going to place a line of blocks above this redstone dust. I would actually recommend using light source blocks like a jack-o'-lantern or a frog light or something. I actually talk about this later on, but at the time I didn't even think about it. But bamboo does need light to grow, so it's a good idea to make that bottom row light source blocks. But then on top of that, we're going to place another line of glazed terracotta so that the slime doesn't stick to the walls. And we are getting there. We are almost done. So once you get this side finished, now it's time to finish the hole on the other side. So we're going to place a line of glazed terracotta right next to where the return mechanism is. So pushed up against that return mechanism, and then again another row 2 blocks up from that, so you're left with this little hole that the slime flying machine can go through. And then on the other side of this, you do need a little bit of a wall to make sure that the bamboo doesn't get flung out of the back of the machine. And again, I would recommend this bottom row be light source blocks like jack-o'-lanterns or frog lights or something like that. But then on top of that, it will have to be glazed terracotta next to that obsidian block. And technically, back here in this corner, none of the slime will actually touch this. So you don't have to make it glazed terracotta unless you just want it to all be nice and symmetrical. And we want this back section to go up by 1 more block, just to make sure that none of the bamboo can escape out of the back. Before finishing up, just be sure to test it one last time once you get all your glazed terracotta placed, just to make sure that it's all in the right location. If it's in the wrong place, the flying machine will probably just get stuck and stop, but as long as it's all in the right place, nothing should happen, and it should just go back and forth like it did before. But as long as it does, now it's just time to build up the walls and plant the bamboo. Now for this hole in the front, there's not really an easy way to fix this, so some of the bamboo will get pushed out. Luckily though, not very much, because it will only be the bamboo that grows when the machine is coming back. So maybe like 1 or 2 bamboo will come out of that hole, but it was just too complicated to fix it, in my opinion, for what it's worth. So when you're ready, plant all your bamboo on every single dirt block inside of the glazed terracotta, and all that's left is to build the walls. Now I would recommend using glass to build the walls, just so that you can see how fully grown the bamboo is, and if you're building this outdoors, it helps the bamboo get sunlight, but it is totally up to you what kind of block you use. Now right here where the glazed terracotta bar is in the middle, we're going to wall up this like it's the outside wall. Technically, this back wall only needs to be 1 block higher than the glazed terracotta, but the inside wall needs to be as high as you can make it, because you don't want bamboo getting stuck on top of the glazed terracotta. So again, this back wall just needs to be at least 1 block above that obsidian block. It doesn't need to be all the way up to the maximum limit. And you can close it off if you want to, it doesn't really matter. Just this inside wall and these outside walls here need to be 1 block above the maximum growth height of bamboo. So from the dirt block, it needs to be 17 blocks tall, or from your rails, it needs to be 20 blocks tall. And while we wait for the bamboo to grow, one thing that I forgot that I did mention is that I recommend using light source blocks of some kind in your design. Sea lanterns, jack-o'-lanterns, or frog lights. I would recommend placing them as low as possible. So on the front and the back, I would place a row of them right here above the magenta terracotta. And then if you want to be symmetrical, you could place it all the way around at this level. That would be totally fine. But again, I would recommend using these. Bamboo requires at least a light level of 9 in order to grow. And so if you're building this underground or even outdoors, at night, it won't receive that light level, so it won't grow at night. And jack-o'-lanterns are fairly cheap. If you make a decent-sized pumpkin farm and then just shear the pumpkins, you end up with a carved pumpkin. And then you just mix a torch with the carved pumpkin and you end up with a jack-o'-lantern. Now for the sides, I would recommend, again, placing light source blocks as low as you possibly can. So right above the dirt row on this very bottom line, I would recommend placing the light source blocks. Now, of course, you won't be able to replace where the glazed terracotta is. Anywhere that there's glazed terracotta needs to be glazed terracotta. But anywhere that there's glass in this example, or you're just random building blocks, that can be replaced with light source blocks like so. Again, you don't really have to do this, but it will help improve the rates by making sure that the bamboo is always growing. And now all that's left to do is wait for the bamboo to grow. Now, of course, you could activate the machine at any point during the bamboo growth. It doesn't matter, you don't have to wait until it's fully grown. But this does help you check to make sure your walls are tall enough. You wouldn't want bamboo to escape out of the sides. But when you're ready to harvest, all you have to do is press the button on this block of obsidian. Now, you might need to place another button on the side so that you can actually reach it, but then when pressing this button, it will go through and harvest all of your bamboo, like so. I love watching this thing cut down bamboo. It's so visually appealing, just watching all of the item drops and being like, I'm getting all of these items, like, yay. One thing to mention, though, is that you definitely do not want to leave the area while this is moving. Flying machines, if they get unloaded because the player moves too far away from them, they tend to break. They tend to just kind of stall out and be floating, and then you'd have to crawl in there and place something against one of the observers and just kind of hope that it resets itself. Sometimes I've seen flying machines like totally glitch out, or they like break themselves. So just make sure that you stay here until it is totally done. Once the flying machine stops moving, you can just leave. That's fine. It doesn't matter if this bamboo is still draining, because to be honest, this bamboo is going to take a long time to drain into the chests. There's just so much of it. And like I mentioned before, some of the bamboo might come out of the front. Luckily, this will be where you are when you activate the machine, so you can just pick it up by hand. It shouldn't be very much, and none of it should come out the back, so it should be easy for you to pick up. Now also, there might be a few stragglers left behind. Some of the minecarts might fill up before they are able to pick up all of the bamboo, but there shouldn't be very much. I tried to calculate how much bamboo there would be at maximum growth, so that you wouldn't be overusing minecarts, but also so that the minecarts themselves wouldn't be overtaxed. Now, if you want to pick up these stragglers, it's very easy. Just place a button on this row right here, and after a few seconds, just press the button. So if you wait just a little bit, some of the bamboo will have been drained out of the minecarts, which will make room for the stragglers that got left behind. And really quick, if you liked this video, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. And this video took a very long time to make. The original file was like an hour long, and editing took forever. Now, some of the bamboo will unfortunately get stuck on this redstone back here, but there's just no easy way to fix that. Luckily, it's just a couple of bamboo, so you won't even really notice. This farm really produces a ton of bamboo. So even if a little bit gets left behind, you're still getting bunches and bunches of bamboo. I just built this design like 20 blocks long. So it's like 1/3 of the maximum size that you could build it. And even just at 1/3 size, I got over an entire chest full of bamboo. An entire double chest plus an entire row in this chest, plus a full hopper. So that's like 1.3 or 1.2 double chests, at 1/3 capacity. If you made this 60 blocks long, that's like 4 double chests worth of bamboo every time it's harvested at fully grown. And again, you can expand this up to 60 blocks, but you want to keep it within simulation distance. Again, because it uses a flying machine, you definitely do not want to leave the area while the flying machine is running. Flying machines do not like to be unloaded. And so because of that also, I would not recommend fully automating this. You technically could do it with some observers that trigger the flying machine, but you would need to guarantee that you're always going to be here when the machine is active all the way to when it stops. Again, you do not want to leave the area while the flying machine is moving. But if you really want to AFK this machine, or you want to build it in an AFK area, you could technically automate it by adding some observers up at the top that notice when the bamboo is fully grown, and then just run those observers down to where the button is that activates the flying machine. That would fully automate it, but again, just make sure to turn it off before you leave, or you're going to have to reset the flying machine, and that's not going to be fun. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it made sense. If you liked it, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out, and it makes me happy. And if you have any questions or requests, simply let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to help you out. But that's all we got for this video, so until next time, I've been your host, OmLedu, hopefully teaching you a farm trick or two, and reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.